Hello, my name is Swiss Bianco. This is the next part of the stgw 57. Now we look at the mitrailleuse, at the fully automatic trigger assembly function. We see here M mitrailleuse, full automatic. We see the full auto trip sear in the upwards position, together with the part of the sear here, in conjunction with that pin there that connects the pressure on both. And here we see the bolt lower part that trips the sear for release it to a full auto as the trigger is pressed. And here we basically see in between, we see the bolt is over, the part is pressed, and it's gonna release relative soon. Here we come then now to the ammunition. So it's 7.5 by 55. There were different variations of that ammunition. The usual one was the Gewehrpatrone 11 from 1911, yes. Can you imagine? So they did modernize the ammunition, of course, a little bit. Sometimes they had greased parts on the bullet that did fade away later on. We see that actually here, that has a bit a greased part. There were also ammunition with black tip, steel core, and also ammunition as a tracer. The tracer was in red. Did work pretty well, I would say. Did light up pretty well and fly far too. But the accuracy was not there anymore. The regular GP11 was a match grade ammunition back then. That of course did fade away once the 57 was out of service and only the MG was used, then the quality did drop. We see here the tracer ammunition with its part in it, was red marked and sealed. Then we had a typical blank ammunition that was used for launch grenades of various kinds. It was a silver color, aluminium often, and it has that ribbed design on the back, so you would see it. There was usually nothing that would fly away. They had different variations. Here we see a variation from 66. It depends also on the grenade what you want to shoot. Here we have the green version. We don't see that. It's just a blank firing ammunition in a green polymer with a brass back end there. I did use those a lot, but that got later replaced with a full brass one. The plastic did go away. Then we have a solid brass ammunition that doesn't shoot, of course, doesn't fire. We have 3 rings on it, so it was basically used for training, for manipulation as we call it. That ammunition had a bit of hollow primer so that the firing pin would not have fire or hit the harder metal and anything. So that was safe to use and easy to use. Then we have different rifle grenades for different purposes. Usually those were not used anymore back in the 70s because it did damage the rifle and they had too many accidents. What was used was the training grenade. Similar design was also used to throw lines, telephone lines or other lines over distances, say over little rivers and things like that. We did that a lot. That was fun. You just had to be careful about the recoil. Similar to that, I still do that in USA with a R15 that is modified, and video about that is on my YouTube channel as well. Then we have another one, different ones. You could get them with or without loading, additional Treibladung, additional powder loading, that it would fly even further and create even more recoil. So yeah, this one was the one that we actually used, just plastic and metal. You could take it fully apart as well. And here we see some of the really simple armorer's tools to fix the 57. We see already it's more like a clockmaker design tool chest there, different tools. And of course, since I was not there by the armorer, I was in a different section of the Swiss military back then. I did not have access to those tools. I used my own tools if I had to work on my rifle. So it starts with simply change the sling, then the ring spring on the barrel for launching the grenades, you know, simple stuff. And then it goes all the way further. The red full loaded chamber indicator, we see here that part that would stick upwards if the chamber is loaded, and spring steel part. We see also here the carry handle. We also see the good feature here, the replaceable lugs for the roller. Locked bolt design there, Widerlager, very clever made there. The front part was cast, and then the rear part was sheet metal. But all in all, really expensive, the gun, even back then. Then about the sights, how to change the sights of the parts of the sights. The rear sight, we see here the hinge, the spring detents, the adjustment lever, and here we see how complex the thing really was. It was a absolute yeah, like a watchmaker piece. Really nice to have, but pretty much useless in war. Here we see adjustment, change of the actual aperture of the sight. Again, we only had one aperture sight in the Swiss military, but you could get for civilian use different apertures, different size of the round hole there. We see here front part of the bipod, the sling part. We have the bayonet locking part and the front sight, of course. Now they remove the front sight. That was of course a bit more simple of a design. Most of the adjustment was made by the rear sight. This just had to flip basically. You could left and right with the front side a bit too. Then the bipod. Bipod was a mixed bag. Often the thing did fold in by itself. The spring part was not too strong there, so you had to be careful, otherwise your rifle would land in the dirt or get wet. Problem is that the finish was just a bluening. No paint, no anything, and the thing did rust rather quickly. Here we have a disassembled bolt assembly, and we see starting on front we have the extractor is a flat spring. We have the ejector with his spring here and here, also a flat spring. We have that pin that holds the the front and the rear part together. That was easily lost, and then the rifle could explode. And of course the firing pin and that transitioning lever with its pin that it holds in place, that did never come much out because the spring and the firing pin did press behind, so that could not get out by accident, you know. So that was at least something you did not have to worry about. Der Patronenhalter is the extractor. You see, they grab it with a screwdriver, and then they put it back in with a hammer. You have to be really careful because that is a flat spring design, and hammering and screwdrivering on that thing, that is not good. Then the Kolbenhals, the metal part, had by the buttstock, the metal part of the buttstock had a rubber buffer in it. So it did not only rely on the big recoil spring, but also had a rubber buffer inside there that was held in place with a spring. It's basically that part here that is in here, and the round part is like by an R15 just for the spring, and is covered up by the buttstock. There we see the little screw that is be taken out to remove the thing from the metal, and here we see the clear and white plate where the name of the soldier would be on it. Then we come to the great example of the recoil spring, really complex. As we see here, we have the good news is that it's captive. So it would not fly out or around. It was easy to take out and put it in. But you see it's a multi-spring, multi-part design there, and it needed to be greased a bit too, that would slide and work pretty well. We have different points and that you needed to look, because the top part did go in the rear end of the bolt. That's why that was so conical, that goes straight in the middle in it. Then we come to the trigger assembly. Trigger assembly, yeah, it was not that ergonomic. Again, we had the rock and lock loading. That was not too well. The trigger was pretty good. Dangerous with the winter trigger, because that did stick out. Really long throw of the safety selector. Plus sometimes the thing did not stop and just would go into full auto if you don't have the plate on white, on semi-automatic only. We see here the part here that often got removed by semi-auto conversion. Then part of that part got ground off, and we see here that hook on the hammer that it often break off there. And of course the long winter trigger that simply falls down and up, spring loaded, was moving on itself often too. So we have the detail how you take the trigger out. Now we have to say the trigger assembly on this one was relatively easy to take in and out. I did that myself too. It was rather simple, not that of a deal. By the later coming 550, the Sturmgewehr 90, that is the complete opposite. There they did go overboard with the 3-round burst and trigger assembly that is more towards watchmaking. This one is just unique as the hammer is on the side for whatever reason, and yeah, it's a strange design, really strange. There aren't that many firearms with the hammer on the side. Usually the hammer is in the middle. We see here the magazine, aluminium body with that zigzag flat spring magazine spring. That was really prone to breaking because it's a flat spring, especially as the people would press in too hard or too sideways or whatever with the bayonet by reassembly. So usually later on the magazine was not cleaned, disassembled for cleaning. Here we see the 6-round magazine that is just for the Dreipatrone, for the blank firing stuff. Then we have here bayonet. The bayonet I did talk about. It has a Swiss style locking part, so it's not interchangeable with NATO or Stanag or anything like that. Then of course again some more checks. What checks? Who does the checks? And all that. In Switzerland, by the military, they were keen on who does who and who does the checks. This check here is essential. He checks the gap between the front part, the locking part of the bolt, and the rear body part. That gap, that gap needed to have a certain size. If it was too much or too little, that would not work. It's basically the same as you would adjust the gap by browning by 50 BMG. Similar to that. Then he adjusts the trigger there, the pull, and we see how it's regulated correct and how it shouldn't be regulated and all that. Then it talks about how to sight it in. Sight in by the armorer level. Maybe he had to change a sight, maybe the sight got damaged, maybe the barrel was not good anymore, so that got sighted in by the armorer. And then of course the soldier who got it could do the fine adjustment. Then about problems with feeding and ejection and what you're gonna do. Then we have safety about the ammunition, that you don't shoot further than this and that you need to look that safety of the bullet is always there, that you don't hit anybody. Now we come also about hearing protection. Even back then that was pretty good. It was a Peltor back then, a green one, good brand, was pretty advanced. Here we see the RAR version of the Zielfernrohr stgw 57, the Kern in Aarau, a little city in Switzerland. So not many of those were made. I never saw any of those in the military. You could not just add a scope on any other rifle because the receiver was of course altered for mounting it. It was a quick mount and yeah, low magnification, so you could not use it too well. Here we see the magazine in it with the long winter trigger on the side of the magazine. So often as you take the magazine out, the winter trigger would come out, which would lead to problems. Yeah, it's quite some nostalgia as I think about it back then. It's amazing that that is already that long time ago. And it did not get any better in Switzerland. It's amazing. So often the scope was not transported directly on the gun. It had its own container with the cleaning kit and all that. Again, it was not much in the military used. Maybe they put it in storage. Here we see the top of the receiver, and we see the scope mount that was added for this kind of scope mount. We see here the loaded chamber indicator, the Swiss cross, the serial number. A is for Army. We see here the recesses, the replaceable recesses for the locking, and here is the T-handle charging. Here we see the rear side also had a recess for that locking part in it, so with a regular 57 you could not mount anything. Typical German style bar, and we reached already 20 minutes, so it's part for the next.